I'm 72 years old. That number still feels strange when I say it out loud. 72. There was a time when I thought age was just a number, something far away, something that happened to other people, not to me. If you're listening to this right now and you still feel young, please don't treat this like background noise, because everything I'm about to say is something I once ignored, and I paid for it with my entire life. When I was in my 20s, I believed I had time to work harder, time to prove myself, time to build something so big that everyone would one day understand why I was never around. Back then, I wasn't a bad man. I wasn't cruel. I didn't hurt people on purpose. I just believed one dangerous lie, that I'll make it up to them later. I remember my first real job. It didn't pay much, but it gave me something better than money. Validation. Someone finally told me I was important, that my work mattered, that I was needed, and I became addicted to that feeling. Every promotion felt like oxygen. Every compliment felt like proof that all my sacrifices were worth it. At least, that's what I told myself. I met my wife when I was 26. She laughed easily. She listened when I talked. She believed in me before I believed in myself. When we got married, I promised her a good life. Not love, not presents, not time. A good life. And in my mind, a good life meant money, stability, and security. I didn't understand back then that love needs something money can't buy. When our first child was born, I held him in my arms and felt terrified. Not because I didn't love him, but because love felt like responsibility, and responsibility felt like pressure. So I worked harder, longer hours, fewer days off, more nights coming home after everyone was asleep. I told myself I was being a good father. I was providing. There's a moment that still visits me at night. My son was maybe 6 years old. I came home late, like always, and found him asleep on the couch, still wearing his shoes, still holding a toy car. My wife said, "He didn't want to go to bed until you came home." I looked at him for a second. Then I said, "I'll play with him tomorrow." I never did. That became the pattern of my life. Tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll slow down. Tomorrow I'll be more present. Tomorrow I'll take them on that trip. Tomorrow I'll sit at the dinner table. Tomorrow never came. By the time I was 35, people admired me. They said I was disciplined, driven, focused. They said my family was lucky. They didn't see the missed birthdays. They didn't hear the quiet arguments at night. They didn't notice how my kids stopped running to the door when I came home. Success is very good at hiding its cost. My wife tried to talk to me. Not loudly, not dramatically, just small sentences. "You're always tired. You're never really here. The kids miss you." And every time I felt attacked. Not because she was wrong, but because she was right. So I did what I always did. I worked more. I convinced myself that emotions were distractions, that feelings were weaknesses, that one day when I finally made it, everything would fall into place. The family would still be there. The love would still be waiting. I truly believed people had an infinite patience for neglect. They don't. By my early 40s, I had what most people call success: a bigger house, a better car, a respected name in my industry. But something had changed. The house felt quieter. Too quiet. My kids spent more time in their rooms. My wife stopped asking me to come home early. I thought I had won. In reality, they had stopped expecting anything from me. As the years went by, something changed between my wife and me. Not suddenly, not dramatically. It was slow, like a light dimming 1% at a time. At first, she stopped asking questions about my day. Then she stopped waiting for me to come home for dinner. Eventually, she stopped telling me when she was hurt. At the time, I thought that meant peace. No arguments, no tension. I didn't understand that love doesn't disappear loudly. It disappears when someone feels unheard for too long. I remember sitting at the dinner table one night, just the two of us. The kids had already gone to their rooms. The food was cold. She looked at me and said, "Do you even know who I am anymore?" I laughed a little, not because it was funny, but because I didn't know how to answer. I said something stupid. "Of course I do. You're my wife." She nodded, but her eyes told a different story. That was the moment I should have listened. I didn't. Work had trained me to solve problems quickly. Identify the issue, move on. But emotions don't work that way. When my wife tried to talk, I treated her feelings like interruptions, something to handle later, something less important than deadlines and meetings. I didn't realize that every time I chose work over her, I was teaching her how little space she had in my life. She stopped complaining, and that scared me now, looking back. Because when someone stops fighting for your attention, it doesn't mean they're satisfied. It means they're tired. There was a night I came home earlier than usual. I walked into the living room and found her sitting alone, lights off. She wasn't crying. She was just staring at nothing. I asked, "Are you okay?" She smiled politely and said, "I'm fine." That was the lie we both accepted. I went upstairs and went to sleep. That moment still haunts me. We lived in the same house, but in different worlds. I spoke in plans and goals. She spoke in feelings and memories. We stopped sharing a life and started sharing space. Birthdays became formal. Anniversaries became reminders of conversations we never finished. One evening, she told me she had started going on walks alone. "Just to clear my head," she said. I nodded. I didn't ask to join her. I thought love was permanent. I thought commitment was enough. I didn't understand that love needs presence to survive. I used to believe that as long as I wasn't doing anything wrong, everything was fine. I wasn't cheating. I wasn't abusive. I wasn't cruel. But I was absent. And absence leaves deeper scars than anger. Sometimes, late at night, I would catch her looking at old photo albums, pictures from when we were younger, when we laughed easily, when we talked without checking the time. I would ask, "Why are you looking at those?" She said, "I just miss us." I told her, "We still have each other." But that wasn't true. Not anymore. The distance between us wasn't measured in arguments. It was measured in moments we stopped sharing, stories she no longer told me, thoughts she kept to herself, dreams she learned not to mention. And I didn't fight that distance, because fighting requires effort, and effort was something I had already given to everything else. By the time I noticed how far apart we had grown, it felt awkward to reach out, like trying to hug a stranger. I didn't know how to start, so I didn't. I thought time would fix it. I always thought time was on my side. I didn't know time was quietly taking notes and preparing to collect its debt. That's when life decided to teach me the lesson I had avoided for decades. Not through anger, not through noise, but through loss. People say children grow up fast. They're wrong. Children don't grow up fast. Parents miss it. I missed it. When my kids were small, they needed me. Not my money, not my advice, just me, my presence. But I convinced myself that they wouldn't remember these years, that kids forget. They don't. They remember exactly who showed up. At first, the distance was subtle. My son stopped asking me to help with homework. My daughter stopped waiting for me to read her bedtime stories. I told myself it was normal. They're becoming independent, I said. But independence isn't what replaces connection. Absence does. I remember my son's school play. I promised I'd be there. I even wrote it down in my calendar. But that morning, an important meeting came up. I told myself I'd catch the next one. When I came home that night, he didn't say anything. He just went to his room. Years later, I found a photo. Him on stage, scanning the audience, looking for someone who never came. My daughter learned early not to expect me. She stopped asking. She stopped being disappointed. And that was worse, because disappointment means hope. Silence means acceptance. When they became teenagers, I tried to reconnect. Suddenly, I wanted to talk. Suddenly, I had advice. But relationships don't work like switches. You can't disappear for years and then expect closeness on demand. They answered politely, briefly, like people talking to a stranger, and that's what I had become. Dinner conversations were short. How was school? Fine. How are things going? Good. I blamed them. I said teenagers were difficult. I didn't realize I had trained them not to need me. One night my son said something that still echoes in my head. He was maybe 17. We were arguing about his future. I told him to focus on success, on money, on stability. He looked at me and said, "You're always talking about the future, but you were never here in the present." I got angry, not because he was disrespectful, but because he was honest. By the time they left for college, we hugged like relatives, not like family. There was no anger, no resentment, just emotional distance, the kind that feels permanent. I watched their lives from a distance, graduations through photos, achievements through short phone calls. They shared milestones with friends, not with me. And I told myself I deserved it, that this was the price of providing. But deep down, I knew the truth. I hadn't provided what mattered most. Then came the day I realized I was no longer part of their inner world. My daughter got engaged. I found out through a message, not a conversation, not excitement, just information. I congratulated her. She thanked me. That was it. My son moved to another city. We spoke less and less, not because of conflict, but because there was nothing left to say. You can't catch up on a lifetime of absence with occasional phone calls. I used to sit alone at night and replay moments in my head, all the times I chose work, all the times I said later. I wondered if they ever missed me, and the answer hurt more than I expected. They didn't, because you can't miss someone who was never really there. I once heard someone say, "Children don't remember what you say, they remember how you made them feel." I made them feel unimportant, unseen, secondary. That realization came too late. By then, they had built lives that didn't include me, and I had built success that didn't include them. I thought the hardest regret would be losing my wife. I was wrong. The hardest regret is realizing your children learned how to live without you, and they did it very well. That's when life delivered its final lesson.
Not through my children, not through anger, but through silence. And then through illness. Life didn't take my wife suddenly. It warned me first, and I still didn't listen. She started getting tired easily. Little things at first. Shortness of breath. Long pauses between sentences. I told her to rest. I told her we'd see a doctor soon. I had meetings, deadlines, excuses. Then one night, she collapsed. Hospitals have a way of making everything feel small. Your job title means nothing there. Your achievements don't follow you inside. Just the sound of machines and the weight of everything you should have done. She lay in that bed looking smaller than I remembered, fragile. I sat beside her, holding her hand, trying to think of the right words. After 40 years together, I didn't know what to say. She looked at me and whispered, "You don't have to stay. I know you're busy." That sentence broke something inside me. Even then, she didn't want to be a burden. I stayed. For the first time in decades, I stayed. But staying late is not the same as showing up early. We talked about small things, memories, the kids, old vacations. Not once did she accuse me. Not once did she say I failed her. That hurt more than anger ever could. One night she said, "I used to wait for you." I asked, "For what?" She smiled sadly. "For you to choose us." I had no answer. When she passed away, it was quiet. No dramatic moment, no final speech, just a long breath, and then nothing. I sat there holding her hand, realizing I had waited too long to become the man she needed. The funeral was crowded. People talked about what a good provider I was, how successful I became, how lucky my family was. I stood there nodding, wondering how none of them saw the truth, that I gave my family everything, except myself. After everyone left, I went back to the house alone. Her shoes were still by the door, her mug still in the kitchen. Silence filled every room. Not peaceful silence, heavy silence, the kind that reminds you that there's no one left to talk to. That night, I sat on the edge of the bed and realized something terrifying. I had spent my whole life preparing for success and zero time preparing for loss. I wanted to call my children. I picked up the phone, then I put it down. What would I say? Sorry I wasn't there after decades of absence? Regret doesn't sound convincing when it arrives too late. Grief doesn't come all at once. It comes in quiet moments. When you reach for someone who isn't there. When you have news with no one to share it with. Losing my wife didn't just make me lonely. It forced me to face a truth I had avoided my entire life. I didn't lose her suddenly. I lost her slowly, by choosing everything else first. And that's when I understood. Life doesn't punish you loudly. It waits. Then it takes away what mattered most. I'm old now. Not the kind of old you joke about. Not the kind you ignore. The kind that reminds you every morning that time is no longer patient with you. My days are quiet. Too quiet. No schedules, no urgency, no one waiting for me to come home. This is what I worked my whole life for. Freedom. And I've never felt more trapped. I wake up early, even when I don't need to. Habits don't die easily. I make coffee for one, sit by the window, watch people hurry to places that still matter to them. Sometimes I wonder if they know how temporary all of it is. I didn't. My children call me occasionally, on birthdays, on holidays. The conversations are polite, respectful, careful. They ask how I'm doing. I say I'm fine. They say they're busy. I say I understand. We hang up, and the silence returns. I don't blame them. I taught them how to live without me. There are nights when I replay my life like a movie, not the big moments, the small ones, the dinners I skipped, the games I missed, the conversations I postponed. I used to think regret would feel loud. It doesn't. It feels heavy, like something sitting on your chest that never moves. People still talk about my success. They say my name with respect. But success doesn't sit with you when you're alone in a quiet house. Success doesn't hold your hand. It doesn't remember you. It doesn't miss you. People do. And I didn't choose them. I used to believe that providing was love, that sacrifice was enough. But love needs presence. It needs time. It needs attention. Things I treated like they were unlimited. They weren't. If I could go back, I wouldn't work less. I'd work differently. I'd come home earlier. I'd listen more. I'd choose people even when it was inconvenient. I thought love would wait. Love leaves quietly when it waits too long. Now I sit here talking to a camera because there are things I can no longer say to the people who needed to hear them. That's why I'm talking to you. If you're young, if someone in your life is asking for your time, if a child wants you to stay a little longer, if someone says, "Can we talk?" don't answer the way I did. Don't say, "Later." Later is a lie we tell ourselves to feel better in the moment. Later is where relationships go to die. One day, you'll wake up with all the time in the world and no one left who needs it from you. That day comes quietly, without warning, just like this. I'm 72 years old, and this is the truth I learned too late. In the end, your life won't be measured by what you built, but by who you were there for.